In his remarks to the General Conference of 1843, Joseph Smith made a distinction between the four layers of the sign of the Son of Man. He knew what the sign was and the physical reality behind it, as well as the meaning of the sign. He had seen the event in a vision in 1831, 12 years earlier. The Lord had described the event to Joseph and likely showed it to him 9 years earlier in 1832. Therefore, Joseph would not have confused the symbolism for the literal. What he described in his conference address was the physical reality behind the sign, not the sign itself. He said the world would believe it was two comets. Joseph knew that the sign was composed of planetary comets. He also knew that the world, not understanding the scriptures or prophecy, would merely see the physical events, two approaching comets. Joseph then made the distinction: while the world would mistake the sign, the saints would not, recognizing it for what it was, a symbolic portent of the imminent return of Jesus Christ. Joseph Smith cited Paul's first epistle to the Thessalonians, wherein the apostle wrote that the saints will know the times and seasons of the day of the Lord and would be watching. If Paul had no need to write about the signs, times, and seasons to his audience of saints, then Joseph reasoned that he had no reason to explain them to his saints assembled in conference. So Joseph only described what the world would see and believe, and not the sign itself. Joseph Smith's description of the approach of two great comets also included the idea of conjunction. He said that the world might believe that these two comets will come in contact with each other. The world, as it stands today, referring to the modern scientific establishment and all those that follow her, will wholly misinterpret the event. We have previously explained how science summarily rejects the notion of planets with cometary tails. Comets, as the world believes, are only dirty ice balls. With this limited and erroneous view of the comets, the planets in the solar system, science will also misconstrue the realignment of the planets of the polar configuration. These planets will be, again, in strict lineal conjunction. But science does not understand this type of conjunction, believing it to be impossible. Science's version of a conjunction is purely theoretical, where planets only appear to be conjoined to the earthbound observer. Instead, the world will suppose that the planets have come in a direct physical contact with each other. This is understandable from the perspective of an earthbound observer, where the electrical interaction between Venus and Mars will make it appear that the two planets are colliding with each other. The two planets will be electrically connected, but not physically connected. Joseph Smith did not, to our knowledge, explain why this would happen. Why will three or more planets concurrently following stable orbits around the Sun suddenly move from their positions to align themselves with Earth? Modern science considers the solar system to be a very stable system, at least in small time scales, measured in tens of millions to billions of years. Scientists believe this to be true, having run thousands of computer simulations into the future. Professor Scott Tremaine of the Institute for Advanced Study explains.
So the problem remained unsolved until the 1980s and 1990s. At that point, it was realized that the only way to solve the problem was direct numerical calculations, and the computers had begun to become fast enough that it was feasible to actually numerically follow thousands of millions of orbits like the actual age of the solar system. In addition, as a result of space missions and ground-based observations, we now know the masses of the planets very well. We know the current orbits of the planets very well. And so in principle, all you have to do is to plug those values, those numbers that we know, into a computer code with the equations of motion that Newton derived, with small corrections for Einstein's theory of relativity, which we also understand very well, and then just follow the orbits for a few thousand million years, either into the future or the past. This has now been done. We've now followed the solar system until its death and followed it back until the time of its origin. All the planets are still there. The orbits look more or less the same. Nothing has fallen into the sun. Nothing has escaped.